What's up, Flannelverse? It's time for Monday Night Football. We've got the Cardinals at the Cowboys. Should be a pretty fun Monday Night Football game. We've had a lot of fun showdown slates this year, but I'm going to be breaking this one down now with Adam, ShipMyMoney, Scherer. We're going to be going position by position, starting with quarterbacks, then running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. We'll take any questions you have as we go. By the way, if you have not done so, please do like the video and, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. And what you see on the screen right now, that is Run the Sims. I have already run the Sims. If you want to run the Sims for yourself, though, closer to lock, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any product at Run the Sims. Adam, yesterday was sort of a fun day. Brock Bowers returned. A lot of big scores in the Bears Bengals game. Did you how'd you do on your Sunday?
Not great. I think it was just like a normal, lose 50% slate. I don't think there was much that like really stood out as far as like going really well or going really poorly or anything like that. Obviously the Jaden Daniels injury was a huge bummer for me personally. Yeah. Chris Rodriguez touchdown was cool. Bill sucking for the 9th week in a row was cool. But yeah, I mean, the Daniels injury obviously really sucked. NBA almost made up for it. I just played like the $5 5K to first. Got 8th in that. Had a chance to win, didn't get there. So like that was kind of just like another kick in the dick. It wasn't a great day.
Yeah, I had like sort of a not great day from the other standpoint. I actually made money on the main slate. So like, hey, I guess on the one hand, you kind of take that, but it felt like it should have been such a much bigger day for me because my biggest stance the entire week, like from the first look at the Dog Bowl on the Dog Bowl show, was Brock Bowers just a smash. Like he was going in the late 3rd round. I was like, no, I think Brock Bowers is fully healthy. He's going to come back and smash in this matchup. And that was my take. The entire week was just like Brock Bowers is like the best play of all time. I got to like 55, 60% or something overall. Brock Bowers had a similar amount of Christian McCaffrey. Loved the Bengals Bears game from the start and just barely profited. Like it was one of those where it's like, I don't know exactly what went wrong other than like I had 2% Drake London was one thing that went wrong. And then I guess I had all of my Bears Bengals was Rome Odunze, and I didn't really get on Loveland, or like actually I drafted him in the Dog Bowl once, but then like didn't play him in DFS because it was like, oh, Cole Kmet is back. So like I'm not going to go to Loveland now that they're splitting tight end duties. And then of course Cole Kmet got hurt in the first half. So it was just like felt like it could have been such a big day and then just wasn't.
Yeah, that's kind of how mine was too. It was like any of my lineups that like started to do well, just like had one normally good player just not doing anything. Like I'd sent you the lineup early in the day and I tweeted it. Like obviously it was so early in the day that it wasn't like I was sweating the lineup or anything, but just kind of laughing at it where like I had all the random guys do well. And then it was like Jamar Chase and Jonathan Taylor doing poorly. I had one lineup finish, I think like top 80 in the flea flicker 50K to first with 2 points from DK Metcalf. I know at one point Sully Bro Chill was top 5 with a 2v2 where it was just he had Titans defense, I had Falcons, and he had somebody that wasn't DK Metcalf, and I had DK Metcalf. Like it was one of those where it's like, oh, the lineup's really, really good, and then just it has DK Metcalf, or in other lineups, it has Roma Dunze, it has whoever. So it was definitely one of those days for me also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also from the Dog Bowl perspective. So I had a huge stance where I was like after the second missed practice for DeAndre Swift, I was like, oh, I think Kyle Monungai has like totally disproportionate upside. Just like worst case scenario, he's like the 40% of the backfield against the Bengals defense. Best case scenario, DeAndre Swift misses. He's going to get 75% of the carries. He's going to be one of the best projected running backs on the slate. And you could get him in the 5th or 6th round of every Dog Bowl draft. So I did that. Like that was an angle that I played, but I only ended up doing 8 drafts before the news came out that DeAndre Swift was going to miss. And I only took him in 3 of those 8. So it was like, I had this really good feeling about it. Like I should really be just, jamming all of the Kyle Monungai in the 5th, 6th round. Got a couple lineups that were Kyle Monungai with Brock Bowers and Christian McCaffrey, and like nobody had that. Like it was just like a super rare combo. But then I did two of that one, and just happened to. And if I had been paying better attention to my combos, wouldn't have had this. But both of them had Nico Collins in them, so it was just like, and like Drake London was the next wide receiver off the board. So it was just like if I had gone Drake London instead, I don't know, just like it was one of those like just felt like it should have been such a big week in so many different ways, and then just was not. So
to me, it was
that
one of
was,
those like, why the fuck do I play DFS weeks? Where
yeah,
like if I just made a bunch of like prop bets and shit, and like I mean, obviously you run into the issues of getting limited from it, like if you were going to take that comment seriously, but like it's just one of those where it's like, oh, I can be right about a lot of things, and obviously in a lot of cases I don't mean that as like bragging, like they were very obvious things, but like I
yeah,
can get a lot of things right and then just still get absolutely killed because you're essentially playing 8-man parlays.
yeah. It's a tough game. Anyway, onward and upward. Hopefully we can win at Showdown tonight. Again, this is a fun slate. I think there's some angles that I am planning to play. I'm curious to hear if you're going to be playing them the same way. We got the question from, I don't know how to pronounce, Jay Shirkowski, asked, there's no actual way to play Kyler tonight, is there, even if the coach has said he will have a role? I think it's tough to get to Kyler. I actually haven't even looked at his price tag, but I assume he's priced like a starting quarterback. So I think that's the correct take. We're not getting to any Kyler tonight. But I guess we can start there with quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, 10,400. Jacoby Brissett, 8,600. Seems like a nice price tag for Jacoby Brissett. Again, if we look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position over the past 5 weeks, is the second best matchup for quarterbacks against Dallas. And then, of course, Dak has just been awesome this year. So we're going to get to a lot of the quarterbacks, and you can see that's what I got to in the Sims with Dak Prescott projected for 53% flex and 21% ownership at captain, and then Jacoby Brissett 60% flex, 16% captain ownership. Still got to well over 50% of both of them. Did you get similar? What are you trying to do with the quarterbacks here?
Yeah, getting to a lot of the quarterbacks. One thing that does stand out is right now I am below the field at captain on both of them. They both showed up around 10, 11% of the time at captain, 21% captain ownership projected to Dak, 16 to Brissett. So I'm a little light there. I have 49% Brissett at flex. I have 59 Dak. So that's slightly over the field on Dak, slightly under on Brissett. Ultimately, I think it's just I'm getting to them a lot in terms of total ownership. I'm not taking like a huge stand on them. If anything, I'm a little bit below the field, particularly at captain. And I think that does make sense, just given that you don't have a ton of rushing upside from either one. They'll both run a little bit. They're not, Joe Flacco or anything like that in the pocket, but neither of them are actively looking to get out there and run a ton either. So I think, and then also like you do have good playmakers in the game as well. You have Lamb, you have Pickens, you have Williams, you have Harrison, you have McBride, so like you have Ferguson. Like there are other ways you can go. Obviously, there's a lot of good players here. So I'll have both quarterbacks a good amount, or I would expect to, but I don't see, at least right now, me like jamming either one over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of what I got to in this first round. I did get to 16% Brissett at captain, which I guess is right in line with what the field is projected to do with the ownership I'm using. Did you use these same ownership numbers, or were you using, okay, and you got to less?
Yeah, but it could be because I adjusted some projections after you ran your stuff.
Right. Okay. Which I like. I don't mind it, just because Brissett he's only 8,600. So like you don't often get a starting quarterback this cheap, and like with his top two pass catchers being like kind of significantly more expensive. So it's like a little bit more viable to get there without like a major stack. Also, I would guess I might have some Brissett captain single stacked. Like you said, though, he doesn't run that much, so still generally going to be double stacked or multi-stacked, I should say. Is that what you're finding? Typically, you're if you have either of these quarterbacks at captain, are we seeing them multi-stack? Let's see if I can find one. Dak, my first lineup I got to, yeah, he's double stacked with Lamb and Pickens. Brissett with Higgins, Harrison, and McBride. That's interesting. My fourth lineup here, Adam, leaves 3,300 on the table with Brissett at captain. But are you generally seeing the same thing? Typically, they're going to be stacked up.
Yeah, seeing the same thing because it's just a normal problem you run into. Like obviously, you can make a lineup that projects well that has like Dak plus Lamb, and then McBride or Harrison or whatever. Like you can make a lineup that projects well that has Dak plus Lamb, but you're really walking that fine line of like, okay, well, why isn't Lamb just the captain? If he's the only Dallas pass catcher you need. Same goes for if you go Brissett McBride or Brissett Harrison. I think and I think you mentioned it, but because of the price on Brissett, you could get away with it easier with him, just because there is a path where like McBride scores more fantasy points, but for because of how other players do, you need the savings at captain on Brissett. That being said, I'm still mostly getting multi-stat, multiple Cardinals with Brissett. And I do think like he is mispriced also to your point. If we just look at how at the projections that came out of the sim, third highest projection on Brissett, and he's less expensive than Williams. He's slightly less than McBride. He's slightly less than Pickens. But I do think you also kind of do get into that scenario of like, yeah, he projects really well for his salary, but he is going to be really popular. He isn't like the highest upside guy, just given, his skill set and everything. So, and also like how many different combinations of Jacoby Brissett lineups can you make that aren't just the very obvious Jacoby Brissett builds that everybody's going to have. So that's probably what's kind of keeping the ownership in check, and keeping me from getting to like 80, 90, 100% instead of 60 or whatever I'm at.
Right. Yeah, I'd say I'm generally happy with what I'm getting here. Like I like both these quarterbacks a lot. I want to have a lot, but like I don't want to have 90% of either of them. Like I think one of the recent Showdown slates we were getting, I think maybe last night I got to like 90% of Jaden Dan or something like that. So that makes sense.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah, he actually was in the optimal lineups,
Yeah,
so it actually like I guess it worked out fine. Chris Rodriguez.
Yes, sir.
Nice. I didn't know he was in the optimal. That's funny.
Yeah.
I did not play Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah, 12.5 fantasy points. He actually got in some of my best ball lineups.
Nice. Probably mine too. Yeah. Christy says, hey, I got Cody White info on this site and I grabbed him for an anytime touchdown. Thank you and go Birds. That's awesome. I was not really sure what to do with Cody White versus Ricky White in particular. Yeah. It was like, I don't know, like Ricky White, I guess theoretically the slot receiver, which is like what they need to do, but then they could move JSN to the slot. So I actually don't know what ended up happening as far as or what Horton. Yeah,
Horton. Like
right.
That was such like a weird spot. Like somebody in our Discord at Run the Sims asked the same question. Like, so are we assuming Cody White is wide receiver 3? I was like, well, first of all, I think Barton or Arroyo are going to play more than usual.
Yep.
And then for wide receiver 3, like I'm guessing Cody White, but like I'm not super confident. And then he scored, and so obviously I took that back and said yes, clearly wide receiver 3 Cody White. But yeah, that was very much a guessing game.
Yeah, that was, and I ended up with 20% Cody White, so like I was happy with that. But I also ended up with I think double digits of Ricky White, which I don't know. I didn't watch the whole game, but in the parts I saw, I don't think I ever saw Ricky White. So
he was on the field, I think, just based on I know I saw people on Twitter excited that Ricky White was on the field.
Okay.
But yeah, it was those two, like figuring out what to do with them, and then Treylon Burks on the other side, where he was on the field a lot. He just didn't do anything. Yeah. But he was one, like when I ran my initial sims before I did any sort of like filtering, he was in like 95% because I was like, I'm pretty sure he's going to actually play based on when the Commanders signed him. They were like expecting him to very quickly get through the practice squad, get in shape and be on the field. And he wasn't getting any ownership. But I capped that some. I was getting a lot of Cody White. I capped that some. But yeah, it was really a guessing game on a lot of those pieces last night.
Yeah. I also the Go Birds comment just reminded me that I went to a Halloween party this weekend where a friend of mine went as me to Halloween, which has actually happened a surprising amount throughout my life. People go as me. I guess I'm easy to mock. But he wore an Eagles hat when he was going as me. So like that's not you. You're not doing the costume right if you're wearing an Eagles hat going as Neil for Halloween. Otherwise, he did pretty well though. Anything else on quarterbacks?
No.
All right, let's move on to running backs. Man, I'm always like my thought initially is always I want to fade Javonte Williams. And then I look at his role. It's like, man, he actually has a really good role. Part of the reason that I didn't draft him in best ball is like a lot of, if you look at his stats from last year, his like explosive run rate, yards after contact, all that dropped off significantly after week 8. And I thought, all right, well, that seems like a pretty big negative. And like, I'm not sure I believe in the talent anyway. So like, I don't know. I'm still hopeful that maybe things are going to drop off for Javonte Williams in the second half. And my best ball bags are not just completely dead. But he has a pretty good role. I mean, he's been targeted 34 times already on the season. He is expensive, 10,000. I was planning to take a fade position on Javonte Williams, but the Sims are not telling me to take a fade position, and I think there's a good chance that they're right. 35% flex ownership, 6% captain ownership is a projection. I got to 40.5 in the flex, 24.5 at captain. So well over the field here. Are you getting something similar? And is that what you want to do with Javonte Williams?
Yeah, I have a ton. 36% at flex, which is about even with the field, but then 24 at captain, which is well over the field. And it's not a spot that like I'm kind of on the same page as you, where like I'm not as anti Javonte Williams, I don't think, because I just don't really have player takes like that. Like I was
Yeah.
drafting him in best ball more on the from like the opposite side of like, I don't know if he's any good, but he's on the
Yeah.
Cowboys and they don't have a running back. And so like, obviously that's worked out and his role has been fantastic. He's, getting the vast majority of the carries, even now that, Jadon Blue has been active. He's involved as a pass catcher. Like he's making big plays here and there. He's on a good offense overall. He projects well. So like all of that is good. At the same time, like obviously I don't feel as comfy when I look and see a bunch of Javonte Williams captain as if I were to just say, oh, I have nothing but McBride, Lamb, Pickens. Like
Right.
those guys are more fun. But it is clearly a good role. You get tons of touchdown equity on a team that scores a lot, really good offense. The price is fine. He came out of the Sims with the fourth highest projection behind the two quarterbacks and Lamb, slightly ahead of McBride. So yeah, I think like he looks really good. It's like if you get the Javonte Williams captain game, it's not as fun a game in general
Yeah.
as if you get like the CD Lamb captain game, but it's very clearly one of the more likely guys to succeed at captain, and he's not getting that much ownership.
Yeah, and he is also like we always like, or I should say, I always, as somebody who did not play him much in best ball, it's always like super annoying the like goal line stuff where it's like, oh, of course, CeeDee Lamb should have had a touchdown, but
Yeah.
there was defensive pass interference in the end zone, and now he gets it at the 1 yard line. But it's also like that is more likely, like because they have CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, they're just more likely to be interfered with in the end zone, and then Javonte is good at finding the end zone once he has that opportunity. So yeah, seems like a pretty good play. And I mean, like we said already, I guess 31. I thought I had seen 34 targets, but 31 targets on the season through 8 games, just under 4 per game, 54% route participation. He's been pretty good all year. Just, I mean, watching him. I also don't have like super strong player takes like that. Just for the record, it was more like the case was being made in favor of Javonte Williams. Like, look at him in the first half of last year. He was amazing. You should draft him. And I was like, but he dropped off in the second half. That's when you really care. So it wasn't like really a player take for me. It was more just like I didn't like that argument. And then on top of it, I drafted him a lot last year and he was just terrible for me. So I think I was, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I took him less than like obviously I wish I had. I think I have like 10, 11, 12%. But it was just like it was a lot of internal, like he's the Cowboys clear running back,
yeah.
but also I guess it wasn't like that clear
No, it
necessarily. Like,
wasn't. That's why I wasn't taking him,
yeah,
because it was like
like
he and Miles Sanders are mixing with the starters, and then Miles
right.
Sanders
I have,
got
I have
hurt right
like a
before
lot
the
of
season.
Miles Sanders too, because it was just like
Yeah,
he might be the starting running back in round 19. The only guy
yeah,
that I don't have a lot of is Jadon Blue.
yeah,
He was just kind of like, it felt like priced at his ceiling, whereas like Williams, if he's the one, he's too cheap. If Sanders is the one, he's way too cheap.
yeah. I ended up drafting more Jadon Blue late. Like I had a big fade position until August, and then I started drafting him because there was some good camp buzz and stuff. And I was like, well, these guys are both old and not that good, so maybe he has the
I
rookie
think
thing.
I think I started drafting him a little bit. I don't remember if he got banged up and missed time, or
I
I
think
think that's
both
what it
he
was.
and Sanders got hurt in
Yeah.
August, but then I don't know.
I
Anyway,
think I started drafting Blue maybe like when he was actually hurt, because it was just like, all right, well, now nobody's taking him and I'll take some chances.
yeah. But ultimately, we have the answer is just Miles Sanders is hurt. Javonte Williams is the clear lead back as long as he's healthy. Like I don't think Jadon Blue is going to be like cutting into his workload anytime soon. So he looks good as long as he's healthy. Jadon Blue is only 1,400, and obviously has contingent upside in case of, I would think in case of a blowout he would get run, but
He
then
did
also
last week.
like an injury. Okay, yeah. So 1,400 seems pretty good. But we've got him projected here for 22% flex and 1% captain ownership. Those are hefty ownership numbers. So I didn't get to that much. Did you get a similar amount?
Yeah, I only have 4% at flex right now. I think it's the ownership probably that's driving it down. Like you can make pretty coherent, $1,400 Jadon Blue arguments. For one, his rushing market share has increased 4 weeks in a row. Now, last week, obviously, that I think was somewhat game flow dependent. You only had a 42% rushing market share for Javonte Williams. That was his lowest of the entire season. So, it's not completely accurate, but like 23% 2 weeks ago, while Williams got 61%, like that looks fine. He hasn't been very involved as a pass catcher, which is clearly a big knock there. 12% route participation 2 weeks ago, 5% last week. You ideally would get that added sort of floor / ceiling of like, yeah, well, he'll catch 2 passes at 1,400. That hasn't been there, but like at some point, maybe that changes. He's somebody from a skill set standpoint that I think is thought of as a receiver, a pass catcher coming out of Texas. So like that could change at any point. Like that would be the case for him is like he has some role here. He's clearly the running back 2 on a good offense, and it's a showdown slate. What better time than to just like hope that this is the, oh shit, he's a pass catcher too, like breakout game. But if he's going to be 22% owned, you just kind of have the whole field playing that already.
Yeah. I feel like he's not a pass catcher. Like I think that was something that I thought, and I might be wrong about this. I might be mixing him up with some other rookie running back, but I feel like that was like my perception for most of the offseason was like, oh, he's electric and a pass catching back. And then that was kind of corrected. Like I learned
maybe that's where I got it from. Because I remember doing, I think, a draft with you maybe and asking.
You think I told you that?
Yeah, I think you told me he was a pass catcher.
I probably wouldn't have said that with any kind of confidence. I mean, I don't know anything about the guy, but I think that was like something I had heard. And then later it was like, yeah, not really a pass catcher, but he's just fast. Like, he's got a little bit more juice than the older guys in front of him was kind of the idea. But
he caught 42 passes at Texas last year.
Oh, really? I mean, okay. So never mind. We'll go back. All right. So maybe he starts being used. I mean, what has last week, was he used at all as a pass catcher?
Routes.
Okay.
No, like he hasn't been running routes at all. So like basically I think he's clearly capable. Like he's, probably not like they clearly don't view him as like his number one skill is going out and running routes and catching passes because they'd be using him that way. But clearly like he's not one of these guys coming out of college where it's like, oh yeah, they threw him 2 passes in 4 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's super promising that he was used that way last year. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think I'll use him at captain at all. I saw the comment from Brandon that you can, if you play him at captain, you can fit all the studs. The problem is that you're just going to be duped so much if you do that.
Yeah.
So
that's like 100% one of those, like, how did I get duped 150 times with a 1% owned captain? It's like, well, there were 2 possible lineups that you play if you play him at captain.
Right. Yeah. So I probably don't get there at captain, although did I on this? No, I didn't get to any captain in this run of the Sims. I will say, I think that this is lower ownership projection than I have seen elsewhere. I didn't pull up Roto Grinders here, but I can just look one other. Just want to double check. The last time I did this, by the way, the Run the Sims ownership projection on the quarterback on Thursday, I think there was a quarterback that was like one place had him 54% and Run the Sims had him at 33%. And it came in like exactly 33%. Yeah, on Tua. So kudos there on whoever provides the ownership projections here. But what I'm seeing is, yeah, like 4% elsewhere. So like that would make a huge difference for blue. Yeah.
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense.
But I think most of the time it comes in kind of between where Run the Sims has it and elsewhere.
Yeah. I've said before, like pretty much regardless of sport on shows, like I'm a pretty big proponent of aggregating ownership.
Yeah.
And also one thing, and this is, I don't know if it's in there right now, but eventually factored into ours. The 12% optimal rate for blue, as long as like our projection is more or less in line with other sites, it's pretty likely his ownership's coming in somewhere around 12%.
Right. True. That's what the flex rate here is, the optimal rate.
Yeah, the flex rate's the optimal flex rate. The captain rate's the optimal captain rate.
Interesting. I didn't realize that was the optimal rates. Okay. On the other side, I think the Arizona situation is very intriguing to me, and I want to play it. So Bam Knight is just 7,000, projected for 35% flex, 8% captain ownership. So again, higher than elsewhere. So I've fallen in love with the play, and then now I see like ownership that's like, okay, that's more in line with where I'd like to be. With those numbers, I got to just 22% flex, 2% captain ownership on Bam Knight. Now the positive with Bam Knight is this is just the nut matchup for running backs over the past 5 weeks. 10.7 fantasy points over neutral for running backs against Dallas. They do it on the ground and through the air. Everything looks great for running backs against Dallas. But then, of course, the downside is it could be kind of a split here. I think like if we knew Bam Knight was going to get 20 carries at 7,000 against this Dallas defense, we would just want to play all of the Bam Knight, and we'd want to play him captain a lot and in the flex. But we can't really do that because we're kind of splitting carries here. What are you getting to of Bam Knight, and how do you think you're going to play it?
Yeah, so I think you can kind of make arguments in any whatever direction you want. I could like frame the, you know, devil's advocate argument or whatever for like if you tell me what side I have to choose, I can make the argument for it. I'm a little surprised that I'm not getting to too much of it because right now I only have 23% Knight at flex. I have 3 at captain. I have 21% Carter at flex. I have 1 at captain. I have 2% Demercado. If you look at the optimal rates versus ownership, they're all coming in under owned. 56% flex optimal rate for Knight at 35% owned, 43% for Carter at 22% owned, 12% for Demercado at 5% owned. So normally when you get something like that, I'm going to end up over the field on at least one, if not all of them. So I'm a little surprised with my exposures right now, but like the negative here, like you said, is that you potentially get a split backfield. They said that all 3 are going to be involved. They're going to play hot hand. So you do run the risk of a split backfield. And Demercado is really the wild card here that messes up this projection because you go back to when Benson initially got hurt and you had, first you had the game where Michael Carter was the guy, like 62% rushing market share. Bam Knight was at 14%. Demercado was at 10. That was the game, I believe, where Demercado had the non-touchdown.
Yeah.
Then the next week you had Demercado only with a 4% rushing market share. Carter was at 38%. He got passed by Knight. Then last week, no Demercado. You had Knight at 50%, Carter at 25, Dearness Johnson at 4. So like, I think the best way to project this is something like Knight in the 45 to 50% range, Carter in the like 25 to 30% range, Demercado in the 5% carry range. But it could be, Demercado is completely out of the doghouse now, and he's at 15%, and Carter's at 25, and Knight's at 35, or whatever. Make those numbers add up to 100. I was pulling it off the top of my head, but like something like that, where like it's just really unappealing, and Demercado and Carter are cheap enough where like if they score, maybe they're optimal, but not necessarily. Knight is expensive enough where like you need him probably to actually have an actual role. But also like if you just get the, I think, median projection where like, no, it is Knight getting half the carries and then Demercado getting 1 or 2 and Carter getting the rest. Knight ends up looking decent. There's plenty of upside given the matchup for any of these guys. And then like the hot hand component, you and I have talked about it before. You're kind of making like a correlated bet where, okay, maybe the median projection isn't great for Michael Carter at 4,400, or it's not great for Knight at 7K. But if he plays well, he gets more carries. And so it's like, well, if he starts the game well, then his projected carries go up because he's playing well.
Yeah.
So like that kind of volatility is something that is generally not going to be measured really well in Sims either, because you're not accounting for it. There's not like a formula you're throwing into the sim, 45% rushing market share or whatever it is. There's not like a, if touchdown on drive 1, then 60%.
Right.
So, that's something where like you can kind of, I think, come up with whatever you want to do in your head and defend it pretty easily.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of on the same page here, just like, and it sort of makes me want to play the ownership game to some extent. Now, again, the Bam Knight projection and Michael Carter projections here way higher than they are elsewhere. So I was like coming in hot, like I want to play a lot of Bam Knight, but then I also want to play a lot of Michael Carter. And then, as you said, Demercado, what I was pulling up here is just looking at the stats, because Demercado got hurt in this game in week 6, and then he was out in week 7. So I wonder when he got hurt. It looks like he played snaps in the first and second quarter. I don't know if he got hurt like early second quarter, but like, I think he, like you said, he's the wild card where he might have even more. Like you could project him for 15% of snaps, but like the coaches are saying it's a hot hand situation for all 3 of them. Like maybe like they didn't cut him. I think people are like so grossed out by the idea of playing Demercado because he didn't score the touchdown and the coach like got fined for hitting him. Like, right. So like I think people are just like, no way you can play Demercado, but like he's still on the team if he's active. Like, you got to think there is a scenario where he's running well and they're just like, yeah, we're just going to keep going with Demercado. So like, I'm sort of intrigued by that too.
There's like the narrative you could make where, the highlight that you're watching when you on SportsCenter, if that's even a show, tomorrow morning is the Demercado feel good game where it's him and
Right.
Gannon like celebrating on the sideline after he scores his like second touchdown of the game or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's just like there's so many ways it could go. But like depending on the ownership, I like all of the angles. Now, these ownerships is less exciting to me because you've got Bam Knight 35% flex, 8% captain, Michael Carter 22 flex, 2 captain, DeMarcado 5%. Pretty intriguing to me at 5% ownership, 3,000. I think even that is lower elsewhere. Let me look.
And also, I will say again, because I tweaked some stuff between when you ran yours and when I ran mine. My optimal rates for the running backs are a lot higher than yours.
Oh, really? Okay.
But
Nice.
I got them at similar exposures, but my optimal rates are higher. So that was kind of strange.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, as you're reading them off, I was thinking that it sounded like that was different than what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna while we're talking, just rerun to see if anything
Okay.
looks different.
Yeah, but so elsewhere I am seeing, I guess Zonovan Knight is getting similar ownership in the 30s. But Michael Carter, actually now I'm looking at two different sites. One of them is closer to you, one of them is lower ownership on Michael Carter. All of them though have DeMarcado single digit ownership.
Actually,
And yeah,
before I rerun, did you change the Arizona rushing rates to the right ones?
yes, I believe I did, but let me
Okay.
just make sure I got it right.
Yeah,
44.5, 40. Yep. Yeah, so
I'll
that
say
should
if not,
be,
then that's the issue.
yeah. So yeah, everywhere I've looked has DeMarcado at a max of 5% ownership, which doesn't seem like that low. It's not as good as like 1%, but like I am seeing, 3% some places. And I don't know. I think that I think people are going to just assume that he's not going to be part of the running game. And I think like he's maybe just as likely or close to as likely as Michael Carter. Like I think you look at the box scores, it's like, yep, he fumbled the ball at the goal line. He's been in the doghouse ever since. But it's really like he fumbled the ball at the goal line, played a few snaps in the first half, and then got hurt in week 6, and then was injured and inactive in week 7. So like I think he could surprise us with his role.
Yeah. And Steinium said, is there a way to quantify archetypes when ranking these running backs? Like, yeah, I think it's basically DeMarcado is your passing down back generally. Like that was his role before Trey Benson basically took it over. But like last year, that was his role. That's what we saw. The game where like DeMarcado ended up being really useful in Showdown because like he caught a touchdown. He didn't play a ton. It was just like he happened to be in on the 2-minute drive at the end of the game and caught the touchdown. So he's the guy that like you would expect if there were no questions about health, injury, whether or not his coach wants to kill him. You would expect him to be catching the most passes, be the third down guy, be the hurry up offense, be the 2-minute guy. Like that's what you'd be expecting from him. And then there would be some chance that he also gets more carries than, on early downs than you're expecting, but that's not what you'd be projecting. And then you'd be expecting the early down carries to go to a combination of Knight and Carter. Carter generally to be more of a pass catching threat than Knight, but like less than Demercado if there were no questions about what Demercado's role is right now. So it would basically be like you're expecting the early down split between Carter and Knight, and then you're expecting Demercado as like the third down, hurry up, 2-minute drill guy.
Yeah, I think that's a good rundown of the running backs. So anyway, it's all going to come down to ownership, but as of right now, like I think I'm going to take I'm going to have at least 10% DeMarcado. Like I think it's a pretty strong bet if he's going to come in sub 5%. But I kind of like all of them. Would you set a rule? Somebody asked this. Would you set a rule max 2 running backs on Arizona?
Max 2, I think is probably fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like I'm obviously using Run the Sims, so like I'm not going to set that rule in Run the Sims. If the Sims think it can work out, I'm not going to. I'd be more likely to set that kind of a rule in an optimizer where there's just nothing like stopping it from a sim standpoint. So yeah, I think that is probably reasonable because like what are the odds you really want all 3 of them? So yeah, I think max 2 is good.
And really just to kind of, I guess, illustrate how much volatility in the projections there is here, not just in like how these guys play. When I first ran Sims this morning, I was getting an insane amount of Demercado. And it's just because the initial, like, yeah, this looks reasonable for Demercado projection had him at like 6 fantasy points. And that was just getting him in like not every, but like a lot of lineups. And really the only difference that was like him getting, I don't know, 40% route participation instead of 30 and 13% of carries instead of 5. Like it wasn't like the initial projection on him was, he's the lead back or something. It was just him having a little bit bigger role. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that's probably not his median, but it's certainly something you can get. And like just him getting a 6 fantasy point projection was enough for it to be like, oh, this is a great play.
Right. Yeah. So I think it looks like a strong play.
Switch Anders said, sorry. Would you rather play Demercado or Blue? It feels like you're hoping for a similar outcome from both, but one's a lot cheaper and less owned. I think Demercado is less owned than Blue, but Blue is cheaper. But I think like you're hoping for a similar outcome in that you're hoping that they get in the end zone. I think I would rather, I don't know if rather is the right word. Like I have a similar amount of both right now. Demercado, I think there's more questions about, like there's a better chance Demercado has a much bigger role tonight than anybody expects than Blue. Like it would be shocking if Blue is just getting carries ahead of Javonte Williams. It wouldn't actually be shocking if Demercado is getting carries ahead of Michael Carter or something. And then the other difference between the two is just how they have been utilized. We haven't seen Blue running routes, much less catching passes. Demercado's biggest role is the pass catching back. So, in full PPR, you do kind of have that, not safety net, but like kind of safety net of like, at least when Demercado is on the field, he's probably running routes.
Right. Okay. He's looking at another projection source, which has them similar in terms of projected ownership. But
we should be similar.
Yeah. I think they should be similar also. But yeah, I think if these ownership numbers hold, then I would definitely prefer Demercado. Like you said, I think there's just like more of a chance that he just like his baseline role is a lot bigger than Jadon Blue's, where Jadon Blue is like probably mostly contingent upside. Obviously could score a touchdown on his limited standalone role. But yeah, I think across the board, some strong plays at running back.
In that sim run that I just did, it came out very similar in terms of my exposure. So, but the flex rates came back down to normal. So yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, so the optimal rates for Demercado, Carter, and Knight are all very, very close to their projected ownership now, and that's why I'm pretty much around the field on all of them. So that makes more sense. I don't know why in the run that I did before it had them going way under owned.
Yeah. $1,600 difference is notable. Yeah, for sure. I mean, 1,600 can go a long way on Showdown slate sometimes. All right. Carter did
Brandon take the first. Carter took the first running back reps. They specifically said Knight starting.
Yeah, they did say that he's a starter, at least as far as he's going to get the first crack at it. So, but that's interesting that he's getting the first running back. I mean, I don't read too much into the first reps at practice, but I've never played football at NFL level, so I have no idea to what extent. Like I sort of like when people talk about like, oh, he was first in line to do the drills. I'm like, does that mean anything, or just that he just got to the drills first? And when I made that comment on Twitter, there were people responding to me like, you're an idiot. Of course it means something. And then a lot of other people agreed. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it in terms of like, I didn't play football, but like I played baseball, and like it doesn't mean anything. It's not like the coach like lines everybody up, but at the same time, like when I was the backup shortstop, I wasn't gonna just like step ahead of the starting guy and like be like, yeah, I'm taking him today.
Yeah, it probably depends on like how much of a pecking order is, how much it is defined also. Like,
right.
I think it was the Washington backfield was the situation there where it was like, I don't know that we have a defined pecking order. It might just, so I don't know.
It's, and that even in my example, like I'm thinking about it, like when I was a freshman and there was a senior shortstop, like, yeah, I'm never taking the first ground balls. And then once I was the starting shortstop, if somebody tried to get ahead of me, it would be like, get the fuck out of the way. But on like a summer league team where there's two of us that are just like both equally, at the same level, like it's kind of just, whoever takes the first one takes the first one.
Yeah. It's just one of those unknowns. But I mean, this is one where they are pretty late in the season. Maybe at this point they know who the starting running back is. I don't know. It just, but the coach did say like, yes, he's the starter in that he's going to get the first look, but they're all going to be involved was the most recent coach speak from Jonathan Gannon. I guess I could read that off.
We've seen this now where like Carter was the guy week 5, and then it's pretty much been a split, but a split leaning towards Knight, and more so last week than the week before in 6 and 7.
Yeah. On November 1st, 2 days ago, on whether Gannon views Knight as a starter until Trey Benson. Knight until Trey Benson returns. He said, "I guess because he'll be the first one that goes out. But all 3 of them to me have their own role. We'll see who's running it well, and that guy will probably honestly get a little more touches. I like our plan going into the game, but you've got to be able to adapt in game by what your eyes see too." So he says at least that it's going to be Knight that gets the first carries, but who knows? Any Hunter Lipke for you?
No. I mean, he's playable at 400, but I don't have him.
Yeah, I got to 0.5% of Hunter Lipke over the past couple weeks. Let's see. Lipke, 5 snaps, 0 carries, 3 routes run in week 6, 1 target, and then in week 7, Lipke. I mean, that's kind of what you expect. Is like, yeah, maybe he'll be targeted once. You can hope for a touchdown. That's kind of the max you're going to get from Lipke. Yeah, 1 target in week 7 also. On 2 routes run, you can, yeah, he's fine. Outside, let's move on to wide receivers, unless you have anything else you want to say about running backs.
Nope.
All right. On the wide receiver side, we can start with the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. Lamb is back now. 10,800, projected for 39% flex ownership, 14% captain ownership. With those numbers, I got to well over the field. Lamb captain, 25%, 37% in the flex. George Pickens at 33 flex, 9% captain. I got well under the field, interestingly, 19% flex, 2.5% at captain. How much are you getting to of the top Cowboys receivers?
34 flex, 33 captain for Lamb. So a little under the field at flex, but then taking a nice stand there at captain. 21 and 4 for Pickens, so a little under the field in both there. And then right around the field, 26 and 5 on Harrison. So I'm fine with all those. Like, obviously, George Pickens is somebody that can burn you if you don't have him. But again, it's just like at 33% ownership. That's kind of a lot for somebody that, you do expect and you have seen take more of a backseat when CeeDee Lamb is out there. Like, he can make big plays. Obviously, he's very good. But the number of targets is just going to take a hit when you have Lamb. You have Ferguson getting a lot of targets as well. I would just kind of like to see lower ownership on Pickens if I were going to go there. And obviously maybe by lock we will. But I'm not really getting there. I think 25% on Harrison looks fine. And then, again, Lamb, I just like taking a stand on him at captain because he is the highest projected player on the slate. Or sorry, second highest to Dak. Highest projected skill player on the slate. Full PPR obviously is great. He looks really, really good. So I'm fine just kind of giving up some Pickens to get more Lamb. Optimal rate for Lamb at captain right now is 17%, 14% ownership. So going slightly under owned there, I think.
Let's see, I pulled up, these are just the 4 games that Lamb played full games, and we have 41 targets for Lamb to 27 for Pickens. So just over 10 per game for Lamb, just under 7 targets per game for Pickens. So kind of a big difference in terms of the target share, even though the routes are about the same, 88, 89, 88 for those two. So yeah, you do kind of see the clear like top dog versus the number 2 receiver with Lamb and Pickens when Lamb is active. And then beyond those top 2, we've got Kevontae Turpin in those 4 games. And here's the weekly route share report if you want to see how things are trending. But Turpin, the past couple games with Lamb back, 39 and 45% route participation, appears to be the wide receiver 3 here. Ryan Flournoy did run 31% in week 8, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if we're going to get to any other receivers on the Cowboys. Doesn't look like I got to any. Jalen Tolbert at 3,600. I did get to 2.5% Ryan Flournoy. That's a little bit under the field, 4%. He's 2,800. Turpin projected for 14% flex ownership at 2,000. I got to 15% flex and 1.5% captain. Also has a little bit of a role as a runner. I guess I haven't looked at his game log. But how much are you getting to of Turpin, Flournoy, or Tolbert?
Yeah, I have 23% Turpin at flex, 2% at captain right now. It's probably a little higher than I would like, but it's certainly defensible. He ran about 45% of routes last week. Like you said, they have used him as a runner occasionally. Not the last couple of weeks, but early on in the season, they were using him as a runner. He is somebody that they'll try and get him the ball in space, let him make plays. That's his entire game. So you're not expecting a lot of targets for him when Lamb, especially when Lamb is healthy, but he is on the field enough and they will just, give him a few opportunities to make big plays. He is cheap as well. So you do get he's sort of like a running back in the sense of obviously not getting a lot of carries, but when they'll scheme him the ball. They will have a play where it's we're giving Turpin the ball on this play. So that is kind of nice when you get somebody at, 2K, it's like, well, at least he's gonna have the ball in his hands, as opposed to a 2K receiver where it's like, yeah, he's gonna go run go routes 20 times and maybe they'll throw it to him once. When they throw it to Turpin, he's probably going to catch it and he's gonna have an opportunity. So like that is nice for him. You'll get a few Kavontae Turpin plays. Flournoy's in 4% of my lineups at 2,800. That is even with the field. 1% Zay Jones at 4K.
Okay. You just moved right on to the Cardinals receivers too.
Yeah, I didn't. I couldn't remember if we were doing team by team or price range by price range. So.
Oh no. Yeah. All right. So you, we can move over to the, and you didn't get to any Jalen Tolbert.
No.
Okay. Yeah. On the Cardinal side, Marvin Harrison. Here, and I'll just pull up. So here's the route share report. Marvin Harrison running the most routes of the receivers, 89% last week after being knocked out in week 6. Michael Wilson, 77 and 78% route participation the past couple of weeks is the wide receiver 2. Zay Jones, kind of interesting, 83% down to 48% in week 7. I'm not sure if something happened there that I missed. Actually, Greg Dortch also saw a big drop, so maybe that was, I don't know if it was a blowout or something, but both of them saw a dip in terms of route participation from week 6 to week 7.
Elijah Higgins ran a lot of routes.
Yeah, so they just used more 2 tight ends. Interesting.
Xavier Weaver also ran some routes.
Oh, I didn't see that. Let's see.
Like not a lot of them, just.
Oh yeah, just but 9%, more than 0. Okay. So in my run of the Sims, and this is, by the way, a great matchup for receivers also. Cowboys just can be picked on, 4th best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the receiver position. Got to a lot of Marvin Harrison, a bit. Actually, I guess I'm around the field, 25% flex, 5% captain. Projected ownership, I got to 30.5% flex, 3% captain. He's only 8,400, so the price is pretty nice on Marvin Harrison. Michael Wilson, 3,200, project for 21-1. I only got to 11%. Sort of surprised. He's obviously a pretty good value for his role, but also getting some ownership there. Zay Jones, Greg Dortch, I only got to 1.5%. Didn't get to any Xavier Weaver. Can you go over again? What did you get of the Cardinals receivers?
Yeah, so one other thing I'll say about the Cardinals receivers too, as far as the routes they ran last week, it was kind of in line with what you expect. It was a drop from the week before, but the week before Marvin Harrison had gotten hurt.
Right.
And when I say last week, obviously I mean week 7, and then the week before would be week 6. But so like you had 85% route participation in week 6 for Zay Jones, 52 last week, but Harrison only ran 23% of routes in week 6. If you go like week 5, 68 for Jones, 52 last week, 11 for Dortch, 13 in week 7. But like the average for Jones this year has been like 57%. For Dortch, it's been like 25. So it wasn't like that big of a drop off for them. And it is a reason that I expect like similar this week. As far as what I got, I'm basically even with the field on Harrison, 26% flex, 5% captain. I'm under the field on Michael Wilson, projected for 21% ownership at 3,200. I only got to 9. I think he's fine at that price point, but his optimal rate is a little bit lower at like 17%. And it's just, again, kind of like I was saying with Pickens, but obviously like a worse version of Pickens. But if the ownership is going to be there, I'm fine with just like hoping you don't, like you get pass interference on the 40-yard pass, or he drops the 40-yard pass or whatever. Whereas if that ownership were to come down, like, yeah, he is a big play threat at 3,200. But if 20 to 25% of the field's going to be there, there's just other routes that I can take on lower owned guys that project similarly. And Zay Jones, kind of the same thing, where he's getting 8% ownership. I only have 1% at 4K. I'm assuming he's running like 55 to 60% of routes, and there's just other guys that I can play.
Yeah. Let's see. I pulled up the last 2 games that Marvin Harrison played the full game, and we had interesting Greg Dortch, 4 targets in those 2 games on 9 total routes run. So he's been playing like that. Yeah, the backup tight end, you're hoping for a touchdown. Just like targeted when he's out there. Only 3 targets for Elijah Higgins in those games, 1 for Tip Ryman, 4 for Zay Jones, 8 for Michael Wilson. Yeah, I guess I don't really have any big takes. Like I would like to get to more of Michael Wilson than the 11% I'm getting here, but I don't feel that strongly about it. Again, 8 targets in those 2 games. He's not like he's free. You kind of need a touchdown, most likely, to pay it off. I think that's kind of true of all of them. But Marvin Harrison, I'm happy to be with the field there. Like I think he's the one who's like going to get targets, and it's a nice matchup. Do you have any other receiver thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to mention it with Dallas. There's no guarantee that this, is sticky, and it applies to this week as well. But in week 7, you had 36% route participation from Jalen Tolbert, 12% from Flournoy. Last week, it was 33 for Flournoy and 17% for Tolbert. So I did want to go back and just specifically look at when those routes came, and it's actually even worse for Tolbert and better for Flournoy than I expected it to be. In quarters 1 through 3, Flournoy ran 8 routes, Tolbert ran 1. And then in the fourth quarter, Tolbert ran 6 and Flournoy ran 5. So at least last week, Tolbert dropped to wide receiver number 5 very clearly. Wow. Don't know if, again, doesn't have to be the case this week, but last week he was very clearly wide receiver number 5.
No, I mean that is at least interesting. Yeah, and I'm not aware of an injury to Jalen Tolbert. I guess it's possible that something like that happened that maybe I need to look at, see if he was.
Well, I mean, he wasn't playing early in the game anyway.
Oh, right. Yeah. He was, good call. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit surprising, but also Flournoy had some really nice games. So maybe they finally
kind of just played his way into a bigger role.
Yeah, and Turpin's still kind of maintaining his role, down a little bit from where he had been, but and also has not gotten, like you said, any carries. He had 6 carries over the first 4 games, has not had any in the past couple. Could be that he is kind of returning from injury, getting into form. Yeah. Maybe he will at some point, but
yeah. That's been my assumption with Turpin. I'm projecting him for a lower rushing market share than I was, after week 1 or 2 or whatever. But I have him getting half a carry or whatever. But also thinking about the skill sets of those wide receivers, I view Turpin separately. You have Pickens, you have Lamb, obviously 1, 2. Turpin's his own thing. And then I view Flournoy and Tolbert as kind of the same guy. So I think Turpin is just kind of locked into his, 45, 50% route participation, scheme up a few gadget plays for him, whatever.
Yeah.
But for that wide receiver 4, 3, 4, whatever you want to call it, between Tolbert and Flournoy, I do think that probably one of them is running ahead of the other.
Kind of makes me like Flournoy if he's not going to get a ton of ownership, and there seems to be a trend in his favor. I'm kind of intrigued by that. Turpin, by the way, was a foot injury. I just looked it up to remind myself. Foot injury. He did declare himself 100% back on October 17th. So it's been a couple weeks since he said he's 100% at least. But yeah, still maybe working his way back in. All right, tight ends. Trey McBride, the clear top tight end. We can start with the Arizona side because it sounds like Elijah Higgins may be kind of interesting also. And man, I got to a lot in my run of lineups, but Trey McBride 9,000 projected for 33 and 13 at captain. I got to 40% and 7.5 at captain. Elijah Higgins 1,000 projected for just 5% flex. I got to 44% flex, 2.5% captain ownership of Elijah Higgins, and then Josiah DeGuara 200. I didn't get to any. Are you also getting to a crazy amount of Elijah Higgins?
I'm getting to him, not at the same level as you are because I lowered his projection after you ran it. But I think mostly this is an ownership thing between Higgins, Blue, not so much Demercado since he is more expensive. But especially between those two, if 1K Higgins is going to be 5% owned and $1,600 Blue is going to be 22% or whatever it was, then I have 20% Higgins right now, and that's perfectly fine. I think realistically, they probably end up coming in closer together in terms of ownership, and then I would want to split a little bit more. Schoonmaker in there as well, 1,600, getting 1% ownership. I have 5% of him. So I think it's kind of just an ownership thing amongst those really cheap guys. Higgins has seen increased route participation the last couple of weeks. I think it was 43% last week, 36% the week before that. So obviously that's good. He's not getting targeted a lot when you have McBride healthy, when you have, obviously Harrison healthy, you're not expecting him to get targeted a ton, and also possibly part of the increased route participation week 7 or week 6 was because of Harrison being hurt also. But the last 3 games, 22%, 36%, 43%, averaging about 23% for the season. Having projected for 36% right now. Could walk that back a little bit. Certainly a spot where if you're getting more Higgins than you want, I wouldn't hesitate to cap him or just lower his projection a little bit. It's not a super confident take of Elijah Higgins is the answer here. It's just he's probably running, somewhere in the 30-ish% range of routes as a backup tight end and maybe gets targeted once or twice.
Yeah, like I wonder if this is knowable, if we had better like deep ball knowledge of like like the Tomlin thing of like, yeah, I just everybody knows I used Darnell Washington when we play against 4-3 defenses. Like, is there should we know why they use Elijah Higgins versus using the receivers more?
Which,
Is
by
it
the way,
gonna
he
flip?
stopped.
Yeah, exactly. He actually said, I'm going to do this again next week, and then like didn't really do it that game. So it's not that consistent. Maybe here there'd be a way to know, but I do not have a real reason to believe one way or another that they're gonna stop using Elijah Higgins, go back to using more of receivers or something. So seems reasonable to project him for about 36%, but like also if he drops back down to, I don't know, 20% and we see Greg Dortch get more or Zay Jones get more, wouldn't be super surprising either. Sort of hard to project, I guess.
Sorry, the other thing to remember too, when you look at if you look at Higgins route participation for the season, like there was weeks where it was like 8%, 18%. They had Tip Ryman.
Right.
So it's not like we're just seeing, it's not like this Higgins bump in routes is at the expense necessarily of like Dortch or Zay Jones or whatever. Like you had a tight end too that is no longer the tight end too.
He's just taking those, adding them to his already existing route participation. I mean, basically we just take the week 5 combo of those two becomes the week 6 for Elijah Higgins. Yeah, that is true. That's interesting. I mean, with 36% route participation to get 44% of him looks like a lot of Elijah Higgins.
You had 40% route participation and an elevated target.
Oh yeah, right. So it'll be less if I rerun it.
Yeah, Higgins had a manually bumped target per route run from when I think McBride was out. Somebody was out or something. So I had to get rid of that and then lowered his routes run. So I got to like 20-25% with the actual projection.
Okay, maybe when Harrison was out. Okay. And then on the other side, we have Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker, Brevin Spann-Ford. I have Ferguson projected for 15% flex, 2% captain ownership. Using those numbers, got to 17% flex, 1% captain. Schoonmaker, 1,600, 1% projected flex ownership. I got to 5% Schoonmaker. Ferguson, like really great role whenever CeeDee Lamb misses, but then when Lamb is there, it's like, yeah, he could score a touchdown. Like he can have a role with Lamb there. But sort of hard to project exactly how much you get into of Ferguson and Schoonmaker.
Ferguson's role with Lamb's actually been really good.
Has it really? Let's see.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm right around the field on Ferguson. I was actually a little surprised that the projection wasn't higher because in general, we've been above market on Ferguson projections this year. But here, just in line with the field, 19% flex, 1% captain. Like, I think he looks good. Obviously, he has a role around the goal line. He's been the number 2 targeted guy behind Lamb, ahead of Pickens in terms of targets. Obviously, he's not generally catching the ball as far down the field as Pickens is and making those huge plays. But I think he looks good. I think, in terms of tight ends, obviously he's behind McBride. But yeah, his like targets per route run doesn't drop if you just take the 4 games that he's played with Lamb healthy so far, which, again, it's 4 games and like over a larger sample, you would expect him to get targeted more when Lamb is out, but hasn't really been the case so far this year.
So I'm using fantasy points numbers, which sometimes can differ from elsewhere. Yeah, just a 1 target difference. They have Pickens with 27 targets in the 4 games. The full games that Lamb has played. So also if you include the partial game, it might be different. But yeah, they have Pickens for 27, Ferguson for 26 targets in those 4 full games. So just under 7 targets per game. Pretty good. 6.5 targets per game for a tight end. 74.3% route participation. Yeah, but I think I'm fine getting this. Like I'm right with the field with these numbers. A little bit more at flex, a little bit less at captain. Did you say you're getting something similar?
Yeah.
Okay. And then in those 4 games with CeeDee Lamb, Schoonmaker.
Oh, and I was wrong, actually. So Ferguson, that's weird because I thought I checked this before. So Ferguson has had a healthy role, like you were saying, with Lamb in. He's at 0.31 targets per route run in the non-Lamb games. He's at 0.21 in the Lamb games.
Okay. Yeah, as you would expect, that is lower without or with
I wonder
Lamb.
if the PFF numbers are just different or something, and that's why I hadn't noticed a difference.
Yeah. But Schoonmaker also 1.5 targets per game. I mean, 6 targets in those 4 games with CD Lamb. Healthy, 21% route participation. Seems fine for 1,600 classic backup tight end. Anything more to you?
Yeah, I have like 8% or something. He's Elijah Higgins essentially, except a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
And probably running a little bit fewer routes.
Yep. You and I were both very happy with our kicker exposures. So we'll move on to kickers and defenses. And I'll bring them both up at the same time. Actually, I'll start with kickers. I with projection 29% Aubrey, 19% Ryland. I got to 20% Aubrey, 21% Ryland. Defenses I got to 17% Cowboys, 19% Cardinals. That all looks beautiful, exactly how I would like it. Did you get similar numbers there?
Yeah, 23% Aubrey, 31% Ryland. Like, that is perfectly fine to me. Obviously, I'd rather have Aubrey, but right now, 29% projected ownership to Aubrey, 19 to Ryland. So essentially, I flipped that. I don't mind ever doing that with kickers. I'm really glad to see that as opposed to like a lot of the shows we've done where it's just like, oh, I'm just jamming the lower owned kicker and really looking to exploit like this ownership gap. I'm much happier just kind of flipping it. One thing that did stand out was that the defenses in general are just showing up more than the field. Only 8% projected ownership to the Cowboys, 4% to Arizona, 14% chance of being optimal for the Cowboys, 12% for Arizona. So relatively low chances of being optimal, but still higher than their projected ownership. And so as a result, getting to 19% Dallas, 27% Cardinals. I don't like either defense, obviously. I expect Dallas's defense to suck like it always does. I expect Dallas's offense to score points like they always do. But one game slate, if both defenses are actually going to be sub 10% owned, you're never really wrong for just like hoping that variance happens.
Yeah. Just hope for a pick six, a random like deflection. I don't know. Yeah, a lot can happen in these games, as we just saw with the Titans. Like Titans were 1% owned, and they happen to get multiple takeaways for touchdowns against Justin Herbert. Like, yeah, just random stuff
while
happens.
also giving up 30 points or whatever.
Yeah, right. Anything else before we get out of here?
Einsteinium said, "Are you concerned about the Arizona front seven ruining this game for Dallas?" Not really. Like, it can happen. And like I said, like I think you can, even if you like whether you want to come up with a specific reason or not, you can play Arizona defense. But like outside of, I'm always concerned that an offense sucks because sometimes they suck. Outside of like that, I'm not like expecting Dak to not, or the Cowboys offense in general to not be good or anything.
Yeah. I mean, this Dallas offense has just been great though. Like they did it against the Packers, which was like looked like the toughest defense in the league at the time.
Packers suck, or
now,
are really
now they
good. I
just
still
suck.
have no idea which.
Me neither. Yeah, they lost to the Panthers yesterday.
Like
yeah,
right,
wild.
and like it was, the Packers are great. Like they just dog walk the Commanders who suck.
Yeah, and now as we've learned, as I've said all along, JJ McCarthy is him. Vikings are going to win everything. I mean, he had a good game. What are you talking about? He scored 3 touchdowns. They won the game.
Like
He wasn't asked to do all that much. And so, but he did what he was supposed to do, made the throws he needed to make. In your face to the haters. I felt good. I felt good about the game. Anything else before we get out of here?
Nope.
All right. I'll be back tonight, 85 minutes prior to lock, doing the same thing again, breaking it down position by position. I will be running the Sims at the end of the show. By the way, we only have like 25 likes, 130 people watching. Please do like the video. It really helps out quite a bit. And of course, if you sign up for Run the Sims, use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. Thanks, everybody. Good luck tonight, and I will see you later.